All right, hey guys. So welcome. This is Kendra, and we've got the lovely Liberty over here.
Hi.
And if you don't know us, then we are the two girls that hang out and like to talk about how we can live as our true you and help you live as your true you. So welcome to the True You Project. And we're actually going to try something a little bit different today. So we had planned about 2 weeks ago. Actually, it was exactly 2 weeks ago, maybe a
hmm
week ago. We were going to record a guilt-free guide to the holiday because we both know what it's like to be stuck in cycles of like massive guilt of thinking like I should be eating this and I'm eating this instead and just totally spinning out. And we thought, right, well, let's see how we can come alongside and offer some of what we've learned. Well, that didn't happen because life took us somewhere else. And so, what we realized in the past week is that really where life is taking us is just to show up and just share the conversations that we have, a lot of times in private, but just share with you guys what's going on in our own lives and how we are learning to love ourselves and find more freedom through that.
Mm. Yeah.
Yeah, so we have a very unplanned conversation today.
Yeah.
Now we'll be talking about guilt because we can both relate to what it's like to feel guilty coming into this time of year. So, Liv, what do you want to add to that?
Yeah. I think I just want to say that I hope this conversation is a step towards connection for whoever watches it, connection with themselves and connection with the people that they love. There have been so many Christmas seasons. I'm practicing Advent, and that's like anticipation and the journey part to Christmas. And there have been so many times when that's just been overshadowed with shoulds and have tos. And I mean, I can't even tell you the pressure that I put on myself when I think back over like the last 10 years to, it wasn't even do it perfectly, but it was just to do a whole lot of stuff. And
Mm,
I think sometimes we can say, well, I'm not a perfectionist. I don't have to, it doesn't have to look perfect, but are you actually just adding more instead of like, maybe it doesn't have to look great, but you're doing tons of extra stuff, which that would be
mm.
me. So, yeah, I hope that this is like a step towards just slowing down, even if it's just watching this video and going like, oh, okay, I could just do this kind of thing for self-care
Yeah,
and showing. So, yeah, so that's pretty much what I
I can
have.
totally
Hopefully.
relate to that, like just adding more to your plate because I'm just realizing, like, so this is my to-do list. And I know, Liv, you've been on an adventure more than me about not having lists, but like this was yesterday's, like, right? Like
Look at
this
all
is
the
what I'm gonna try to
crossed
achieve.
off.
Yeah, there's two. Sorry, three. Three. And I know, I've watched loads of things that say only pick the six most important things to do each day. And I'm like, yeah, that's great. What happens when there's like more than six things that feels like it
Mhm.
needs to be done right now? And I think that's when I start to completely get stuck in this guilt trap and guilt trip.
Mhm.
Because I have this feeling of that like everything needs to be done now, and if not now, like yesterday. And um like and recently I've just been saying like I just need a clone. Like I just need I need two of me to try to get all this done. And then when I step back and think about that, I'm like, yeah, is that really the answer? Because if there were just two of you, there'd be two lists like this because your clone would be doing the exact same thing um in just like
Yeah.
overwhelming and piling more and more on. So yeah, I guess maybe if we can even just talk about like how do we deal with these lists? Like, it's coming into Christmas and what's that song like? Making your list, checking it twice. And I know it's Santa, but really you're the Santa, right?
hmm
And how do we like step out of this idea of list and into presence? Because I know I'll just say this really quick. Like I know for me, what I'm actually desiring in all this is like presence. Like I just had a situation just like an hour or so ago, where we like got our garage redone. We've had stuff in storage. We need to move stuff back in there. And we have a flight deadline in like 10 days when my parents come, because all the extra stuff is in the spare room that they're meant to be sleeping in. That's like totally, you can't walk through it. Yeah. And so he's like, oh, like, let's, should we do that today? Because it wasn't raining. Got to take advantage of the weather when you can. And so I'm like, oh yeah, I can fit that in. I'm here. Hi, and there he is. We're just recording. So, and so it's like, yeah, sure, I can fit that in because I'm wanting to be present. I'm wanting to do that. I have that desire to participate in this activity that is for our house, right? And meanwhile, I'm like, I gotta do this, I gotta do that, da-da-da-da. So I'm only half-assed doing anything because I'm always thinking of what I should, and there's the guilt trigger, what I should be doing instead of what I'm doing now.
Oh yeah, I can so relate to that, not being present in the one thing because you're thinking about the list or you're thinking about whatever else, like, and so it kind of steals that. It doesn't even steal the joy, it just steals like the being there. And I'll also just chime in about what happens when I have lists too. Here's my list about what we want to talk about today. And, and most of my lists look like sticky notes now that I put on my water bottle. And as I get them done, I throw them away.
Yeah.
But a couple of weeks ago, about 10 days ago, we decided to do something different this year, which I love doing different things, and get a Christmas tree right after Thanksgiving. And so that was new. And so I took my 14-year-old and my 11-year-old, and we didn't go and find the perfect tree. We just got one at the grocery store. Again, doing something different. And we tied it to the top of the car ourselves, and we came home. And, kids sometimes have some really great instincts. My 11-year-old literally came home. It was Sunday afternoon, got in bed and said, Mom, we are all so tired. And I'm especially tired. If we don't rest, this is not going to go well. And I was like, okay, thanks, Drew.
I love your kid. Like,
literally turned over, pulled his covers over his head, and took an hour nap.
Okay, you need to come hang out with me. I need some of that.
Yeah, I was kind of lost. I was like, I can't get the tree off the top of the car by myself. I mean, maybe I could have, but it would have been a disaster. And so I really had no choice but to wait on him because he's kind of big and brawny. And in the time, I still had I would like to say that I went and also took a nap, but I unloaded groceries and got the Christmas tree stand and kind of did some of the background stuff that needed to be done anyway. And I realized later that was my time to kind of check in with myself, but instead I didn't do what I always did. I didn't keep going and forcing everything. And I didn't let the guilt of kind of almost overdoing it overwhelm me, right? Like pushing through, because we didn't just go get a Christmas tree. Of course, we did all of the weekly grocery shopping, which that's kind of a lot. But anyway, I just realized in retrospect that hour when he was sleeping, and I still could have done some of this stuff, but it wasn't what I was doing. It was why I was doing it. And that is where the line of guilt sometimes starts for me. Because I realize I'm not doing this because I want to do it. I'm not showing up here with my whole heart. And then later I'm like, oh, I feel guilty because that's not really how I want to live. I want to live there. I want to live present and engaged and connected. And I say that all the time. And then I can't do that all the time. That's really the way it is. And then I have to practice letting go of what I can't do.
Do you know, that reminds me, so I think it was on Sunday, similar, I'm just like envisioning bringing in the groceries because Sunday I went grocery shopping and we had been out in the morning and Saturday. So like Saturday, this weekend was like hectic. So Saturday we went to it was like a training for this technique called Emmett technique, which is like really like touch to realign your muscles and stuff. And my husband and I had treatment from a friend of ours a couple times and really enjoyed it. And so she was offering a course where we could learn to do it on each other, right? So we're like, let's do this as like a gift to ourselves and like a way to care for ourselves and like increase like our relation, like upgrade our relationship. And so anyway, so that was Saturday and that was Sunday morning. Early starts totally brought us to the wrong hotel because like, why use a map when you can remember where the hotel is supposed to be?
Right, why?
And so anyway, that's not the point. So we were there. The body work on Saturday knocked me on my ass. I was asleep drooling in the car on the way home and had to take a nap when I got home. And then I was on my feet for 8 hours working at the cafe. And then Sunday was the same thing. So then it was like, okay, no food in the house, go grocery shopping. And I was like, I was driving home or I was like putting the groceries in the car and I thought, you know what? I can tell my cycles are like ding, 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 like, and I'm just needing, right? Like, and so I thought, right, okay, what I don't want to happen is I don't want to get home and be so rushed unpacking and then we're starving. And so we're just throwing the food on the table and we're just like kind of going through the motions without really knowing what we're doing. And so I called Lee up ahead of time and I said, hey, I really feel like having a nice kind of like sit down together and like, can we get out and put the cheese on the platters? Like, can we just, and can I shower? I was like, I really want to shower first. And that for me was doing something different to increase the presence because normally I'm like, it's like the cycle, like you food shop, you take it home, you unpack the bags, you put the bags back. It's like robotic how it works, right? We've been in kitchens together. There's like a system. And and I was like, no, like I want to feel beautiful. I want to look beautiful. I want to sit down and be relaxed and give myself those like extra 15 minutes to shower first and then sit down. And that felt really, really good. Like, and that felt like me, like having a say as well, like, so I don't know, just to throw that out there, because I don't know how that was connected, but that unpacking the grocery thing and rushing and to try to get it finished totally was something that I was going to get stuck in that.
I love how you said that you used your voice to care well for yourself and to say, no, I really need the cheese platter and I need a shower. Like, it's so basic sometimes, these things that we need, that we forget to just speak up for and just say, hey, knock, knock, over here. And that's what I wish I had done when my son had pulled the covers over his head. I wish I had actually said, I didn't need a nap, but what I needed to use my oils and I needed to sit down and probably just read for a minute. That just resets me, kind of the way a shower will do sometimes too, but it's a little bad in me. But what I connected that with when I was hearing you talk is using your voice to say what you needed helped you feel beautiful. You looked beautiful. You experienced, you were totally present.
Yeah.
I don't hear that.
If I hadn't done that, I would, the whole time I would have been sitting there, I would have been so strung out because I wouldn't have had the space for the pause. And I would have been wishing that I was wearing something different or had showered, like I would have been.
But you weren't standing up and eating the cheese.
Right. Yeah. 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 And so it's because I don't know, like if you do this, but I do this all the time I've done this all the time and I'm learning to do it differently of like just saying, going along, saying yes until I'm in a position where I'm like, I really don't want to be here. I want to be over here. But to have gotten there, I would have had to backtrack with so many yeses to say, actually, no, I don't want, I'm not hungry right now, or I'm not hungry for this type of food right now, or I am hungry for this type of food, but in order to have that food, I want it to make it in a certain way. I don't want to just slap it on a plate, right? Like, so all those many agreements that we can make with ourselves or other people that aren't actually aligned with what we're desiring and needing, it can totally spin us, like by by the time you finish, you start off here and you end up like miles apart.
Yeah.
And that feels like a huge leap to get from here to here, but it starts like back here, which is those little things.
It's the little things, and I think it's the little, like, we can stop wishing for something different if we're willing to just use our voice to care well for ourselves. That's what I think we're talking about really with the guide to the holidays. Is it's the little things of, no, can we just sit down and eat? Could we, like, one thing that I've invited the boys to do, and totally not going to do it 100% of the time, is this little Advent reading, and there's a song that goes with it. Like, it's just a curated Christmas album. That's all it is. It's not like a special Advent song or anything like that. And what I recognized was how much, like you said, that you looked beautiful and you felt beautiful. I'm always going for like peace and connection with my kids anyway. And I recognized the other night, it was like a 3-minute song. And we all just laid there on the bed and listened to it and let it go over us. And it was probably the best Advent devotion we've ever had. And I was doing nothing. They were doing nothing.
Yeah.
And it set us up for this kind of very short, less than 5 minutes, meaningful conversation. And it wasn't because I wished for something to be different. It was like, no, I really want to do this really small change.
Yeah.
Instead of reading our other book at night, I just want to do this small thing. And it's really important that I think we practice this.
Yeah.
And I couldn't believe how great it turned out. And the thing is, it doesn't always turn out that great, right? Like, we don't always get the appreciation and the cooperation of our partner to say, like, yeah, you go take a shower, honey, I'll unload the groceries, whatever.
So, okay.
That's not a reason to not do it.
No. And okay, let's do this. And then I want to ask you a question. So I found myself, because of my control freak nature, so my husband was like, yeah, no problem. Like, I'll bring everything out and set it up. You go shower. Like, so he was in agreement, right? So of course, I find myself, I wanted to make crackers. Like, I wanted to make gluten-free crackers. So I'm like, I'll mix up the crackers first. I'll stick them in the oven. He was like, I'll unpack the groceries and put stuff on the table, and you shower and did it then. Okay, awesome. So the crackers are in the oven, and I'm watching him put stuff on the table, and I'm like, there's packaging. There's packaging on the table. I don't want packaging on the table. That's not my idea of beauty, right? So I'm like subtly tiptoeing, inserting myself into the packaging without trusting. So here's the word: without trusting that, like, that by the end, right? Like, because there's a process, and so during the process, it involves taking something that's in packaging out of packaging, right? Like, so, but I was like, no, like, got to get in there, because it was this like scarcity. I was noticing this like scarcity on my part of like, it's not going to happen like right or quick enough or fast enough or whatever. And I feel like that those ideas of that scarcity can often drive those behaviors that then we're stuck in like this guilt cycle, because we're piling on so much to try to control something and try to fix something that maybe doesn't even need fixing in the first place if we just stepped back and trusted. So my question for you, Liv, was like, what do you feel like, where does the guilt start from? I know I kind of like went there a little bit, but yeah.
Where does it start?
I feel like it starts from.
Wow, I feel like that's kind of the $1 million question. My guilt, it starts probably, I would say, in a couple of different places. Like, if there's a big wide river of guilt, there are lots of little tributaries that kind of feed in at the neck of it. So one way I know guilt starts is when I look at what other people are doing and how successful they are at creating what looks like a really spectacular Christmas montage. So that's one thing. If I start comparing, or I start like looking at what other people are up to, I feel like saying, like, give me your broken and your tacky and your tantrums and your uncooperative kids and your failed souffles. Those are the pictures I want to see for Christmas, because that would really help everyone. But so the guilt starts definitely if I start comparing. And then I think the guilt started, I think it starts a way, way back on this idea that everything is up to me. Like, I have this like overactive responsibility gland that we've talked about on some other videos and Kendra knows about. And so it feels like everything's up to me. So if I'm not orchestrating it, then I can't trust the process. Just like you said, I have to trust the process that when there's like cheese in a package, the package has to come off before the cheese can go on the platter. So a lot of times I don't trust the process that what we're doing is just enough.
Yeah.
Right. So I feel like I have to, so my guilt starts with like, is it enough to just have hot tea and watch the same movie that we've watched a million times before? Yes. Like I know in my head it is, but then I start to feel this like, I don't even know how to describe it. It's like maybe like a rabid hamster that's just like toiling so fast and I can't really slow it down. Even, like if I take a breath, it just takes many breaths.
Yeah.
Not one. It's not like I just take a breath and look at things. It's multiple. So I think the guilt also starts, so those are two tributaries. And then the guilt also starts with like what my imprint is from my family, of the way things are supposed to look. Things are not supposed to look broken at Christmas. Well, really anytime, but certainly not at Christmas.
Yeah.
And that's like, I don't have a way to escape that this year. I just got divorced. Things are going to be different. Things are not going to look the same. And yeah. So I would say those are the three main tributaries: comparison, the thing inside of me that spins really fast and that says what we're doing isn't enough, and then my family imprint.
I think what's coming up for me, if I ask myself that question, is like, like not letting people down, which is probably similar to that second one that you were saying of like, this is enough, so I'm going to let them down. And like, so it's like this it's like this expectation, but I'm assuming that the expectation is coming from their side of things. It may or may not, but I'm thinking I need to achieve and perform and contribute at this level. So then, like, so for example, one of my things on this list was post 2 orders, like 2 customer orders in the mail. And one of the orders came in at the end of last week. I didn't see it till Friday. It came in like midnight on Thursday. So call it Friday. It came in. I didn't see it. Whoops. Until like Friday night, right? And then I was like, oh, well, like it's the weekend, do it on Monday. Realized I didn't have some of the materials that go with our beautiful oil blends, i.e. how to use them, because that would be helpful, right? So I'm like, okay, get the printer. I'll get them printed by Tuesday. Call the printer today. They're like, oh, our machine broke. It won't be till tomorrow. And the whole time I'm like, the customer ordered it on Thursday. The customer ordered it on Thursday, right? Like, because my expectation is like next day delivery, because we live in this instantaneous world where like if he had ordered it with Amazon, he would have had it. And in certain places of the world, he could have had it in 2 hours. And a week, oh my God, a week, right? So it's just like it's like coming to grips with like the expectations that we're living under. And what I realized, I emailed him yesterday and I was like, right, like this may not be his expectation, right? Like he didn't order it from Amazon for a reason. So if I let him know that there might be a delay, then we're on the same page of expectation and it eliminates the guilt. And so that like took some of the pressure cooker off, but I'm still aware that like there's this feeling of like failure, I suppose, that like why don't we have a system that can get stuff out in 24 hours kind of thing. So oh yeah, you're back.
I think that hang on, I have to change my Wi-Fi. I'm sorry.
Okay, cool.
It's not working.
That's all right. We get to see your 11-year-old with you on your profile picture.
Better. Hey, Can you see me again?
Nope.
Sorry about that. That was such an interruption. Real life. Living in the country. I cannot.
Oh,
Okay,
I
there
can
you
see
are.
you now. Yeah.
Okay. Sorry about that. I think you said another thing, and as you were saying, I was like, oh, that would definitely be a tributary to my guilt, is that I don't want to hurt anybody, and I don't want to let anybody down. I have this illusion that I can be like a Santa, a real life Santa, right? Where everybody gets what they want and nobody is ever disappointed or hurt. Reality check, just 1 second. And also a lot of times I'm operating from that same place that you said, like I'm operating from my assumption of their expectation. I don't even know if they're expecting that.
Yeah.
So one thing that I'm trying to practice more is curiosity, because that, first of all, that kills the comparison thing. When I ask, like, how did you actually get all that done for Christmas? Right? Like if I look at somebody's picture and it looks perfect, I'm like, how did you get all that done? And then I find out, like, well, their mom was living with them, right? And she had nothing to do except to help the children bake perfect cookies or whatever it was. And so one of the things is curiosity about, like, asking questions about that. But one thing that I'm doing differently with my kids and with me, checking in with me, is asking, what do y'all actually want? Like, do you want to give gifts to your teachers? And my 14-year-old's like, I hate my teachers. Hell no. It's like, great. I'm not giving teacher gifts. I'm not going to make him give a gift to a teacher he actually despises. Like he has a serious clash with one of them. And I'm like, fine, we're not. Just because I'm not doing it. So, but curiosity helps. And I think curiosity kind of is built into our idea of the pause.
Do you know what's coming to me as you're saying that? I'm just thinking like, so part of one of the guilts that I'm having recently is like, I'm so caught up in trying to do those lists and do things. So in addition to True You, we have a fish farm, which is a whole story in and of itself that we'll save for another day. But the short version of the story is that we thought that 2 years ago, 18 months to 2 years ago, we'd like be at the point that we're at now, right? So we're like 18 to 2 years behind, and we're running out of cash. And like, so there's lots going on, lots of awesome opportunities and cool possibilities coming up. And at the same time, like lots of risk. And so uncertainty. And so when we're faced with uncertainty, my MO is the more I can do, the less uncertain, because if I'm doing, then there's something certain that I'm taking action, and it feeds into that whole control thing. So all that to say that as I'm doing and taking on and saying, well, I'll make this phone call and that phone call and that I'm also aware that my connection with my husband is drifting because I'm not asking him what he wants of me, right? So my curiosity has left the building because all I'm focused on is do and execute, and I'll use the word control. And so that I'm so glad you said that, because that's just reminding me, like, what would it be like if I said to him tonight, like, just curious, like, of all this stuff that I have thinking that I need to do, like, how much of it do you actually want me to be doing? Like what's more important to you? Like, that I make all these phone calls or that we clean out the garage together? Like, you tell me, because if you're cool with doing the garage, like maybe I could be cool with that too, right? Like maybe not. Maybe I'd be like, that's the stupidest thing in the world. I got to make this phone call. I don't know. But at least to have that conversation. And from the conversation comes connection, right? So then we're back to a place where ultimately, like you were saying, that's one of your like core drivers.
Yeah, right. Yeah, I love the way you pull that back together. Like, oh, in the curiosity, I do get to create connection, right? Like I knew that my son did not like his teacher that much. But when he was like, I'm pretty sure he literally said, hell no. And I was like, yeah, I have to pay attention to that.
That's pretty definitive. Like you can't get more sure than that.
And I felt pretty connected as he, went. I mean, I really heard his anger and his loneliness, and I don't know that she picks on him, but he because they're clashing, it just feels like everything is just, God, it's just like a battle, just to get through the hour class every day. So, and I can relate to that. I had a teacher like that, right? And got in trouble for things that were not even, I don't know. I felt picked on, like kind of the same way he's been getting merits in her class. So anyway, yeah, I just like that, the curiosity. And I think it not only creates connection in our relationships, but like I think of relationships with others, but I think it creates connection in our relationship with ourselves. Because if I'm asking them, what do y'all want to do? Do you want to make cinnamon rolls for the neighbors? And they're like, well, I don't know, maybe. I'm like, do I really want to make cinnamon rolls for the neighbors? It's not like it's no work for me.
Yeah.
Is that how I spend my Christmas time with the kids? Because I have to split it up now, so my time it's not unlimited anymore. It's like I have this little block, and I want to be very intentional with how I get to spend it, and it's a currency now. So anyway, yeah, that connection, it happens both ways, with out there and in here.
Yeah. So I want to share something, just another way for connection that this just feels ties in with this conversation. And it's not something that we often talk about, like spot on here, but we have, so the connection, the thing that's coming to me and saying all this is connection to others, connection to selves, and then like connection to a higher power. And one of the things that recently, like just in the past sort of like couple days, is I'm realizing is, so I come from a background of like a strong, well, my parents were like, they're super Christian, and they brought me up super Christian. And I really struggle with identifying with that at the moment. But if I had to hang my hat somewhere, that's the closest place that I would hang. But it's not something that's a whole nother topic as well, for a whole nother, the conversation. But my point is that in exploring all of this for myself, what I've always thought and had the assumption for myself that, like I have a connection to God or a higher power. Like it's just an assumption because I was brought up in an environment where like not having one wasn't really an option, right? So it was sort of like, it was just like I took that on for myself. And what I'm realizing lately is actually that connection probably isn't really as strong as I thought, right? Like, because I'm not actually, I'm actually avoiding connection through the action. Like it's that same thing, right? So I'm not actually creating space in my life to cultivate a connection. And it's so amorphous, and like, how do you even explain it, because you can't see it, right? But just that time, I'll say it starts with time with myself, and through that time with myself, seeing what might come from that space that is not of me. And like literally just this morning I was journaling, and I feel like probably for the first time I got curious to actually write in my journal. I'll often write in my journal as if it's like a conversation with this other thing, and was like, oh, well, what do you want? Right? Like,
wow.
Like, oh, like I'm pretty like caught up in all this over here, but wait a second, like, what do you want? And it's that curiosity, I think, as well, that like it just totally came to me as you were saying this, like to be curious of what is asked of our lives. Like so much of the guilt that we feel, it's because we put it on ourselves, because we're thinking that our lives need to look a certain way without actually stopping to ask the question of however we got here, whether you call it the universe or whatever. Like, what did you have in mind when you created this body and you matched my soul with this body? Like, what was your plan? Because it just first time in life ever thought to even ask that question.
I love that so much. I'm curious, of course. how did you feel? Like, not just noticing that it was the first time you asked the question, but how did you feel in the experience?
It felt like, oh, that's a really good question. It was a really subtle, slightly bigger breath. Like, because I think because I'm so used to like, and because you have to picture this, right? Like I'm sitting here with my journal, with my pen in hand, waiting for the answer, right? Like so,
Yeah.
add it to the list. So this, I'd say there was like a slight pause of like, oh, I just asked a question. Like, okay, now where's the answer? Kind of.
Yeah, I have it was my therapist actually. And one of the things that I learned in this training that I did with him and his group last year was a bigger life is always waiting with a question that has not got a definitive answer. Right?
So
bigger life, and then this is a paraphrase, this is the way I understand it. Like there's a big, the life that you're meant to lead is directly tied to questions that you ask that don't have an answer we're ready to write down, right? Like, what do you want? It's kind of like saying like, are you around here anywhere? God, grace, universe, like, are you in this, you in that? Like just waiting to see, to have that, the sense or the sensation or whatever. So yeah, I just love that. Like, what do you want? What a great question and then just let whatever comes.
See, yeah.
And to keep asking the question when you're not journaling.
Yeah.
Right? Like to have that as a question that you're holding in your heart, even like throughout the holiday season too. What did you have in mind instead of Pinterest and Southern Living or whatever,
Yeah.
whatever the traditions are in Wales. I don't even know. But there are some. I'm sure there are some, right?
I'll say this, what I also sort of found that this morning that I feel like is connected to the guilt thing is I was aware that part of like, so that whole like letting other people down thing is also like big fear of like, ooh, letting down God, right? Like how, like letting down the ultimate, whatever that ultimate is, right?
And I have that.
Yeah. And so it was like, and then I realized, so if you think for a second that like guilt, if we have an expectation and then the guilt comes from the gap that of like what the reality is compared to the expectation, and we have the strong desire not to let down, I realized, oh, but that's because you care. Like you actually care enough. You care enough, Kendra, to want to it's like a really fucked up way of showing love, right? Right? Like
yeah, but you could give yourself credit for the care, right?
Absolutely, yeah. And so I think, I remember that's something that you learned and taught me from the Sage Hill training. And what they say about guilt is that the upside of guilt is that you love yourself enough to know when you are out of integrity and you wish you did it different. And so I feel like it feels like it's like the silver lining and the hope in that like when we're feeling the guilt is to kind of question like, well, what is it that I'm caring about so much that I'm willing to sacrifice my own like my own sense of self in order to achieve this thing that I'm caring about? And what if actually I could hold on to the care and just get there in a different
you're actually making
way.
You're making the exact same hand motion that you made when you were separated, and now you're making a loop of connection. I just want to point that out. I'm just noticing that
the body knows.
Before you were talking about how you want to be here, but you actually end up way over here, disconnection and all of that spinning and everything. And so now you're talking about like, oh, I could actually connect it with care. And I love that. I love that reframe so much. This really wise friend of mine said last week that what we tell ourselves about our experience is actually what changes our experience. So as I'm telling myself about some recent really challenging experiences that I've been having, I am experiencing that based on what I'm telling myself. So if I'm telling myself that I'm feeling guilty, that I can't buy as many Christmas gifts, or that I'm not decorating, or that I'm not baking cinnamon rolls, or whatever it is, it doesn't even matter what the thing is. But if I'm telling myself, I'm not doing enough or whatever, that's going to be my experience. But if I can reframe and say, no, it's bothering me because I really care. And because I want the experience to be memorable. I want the experience for my family to be restoration this year, right? Like,
Yeah.
and that's a pretty big ticket item. Probably not going to happen in 1 year. Just saying. I really love that care. Maybe that's why I had to show up this morning, just for that one nugget. Actually, that's not the only nugget I've gotten. You should see all the sticky notes that
I was just remembering, do you remember that time we were talking about like the 3 C's? So it's like
Yeah.
curiosity, care, and courage.
Yeah. Yeah.
And we've hit upon
Actually,
two of them by accident.
I think that's exactly what we're talking about now, right?
Yeah.
Like the curiosity to say, is this what you want? Can I be in integrity with myself in this situation if I agree to it?
Yeah.
Caring well for the desire to care. And then I think that naturally the desire to care, if we're honest, our desire to care for others is mirrored in a desire that we have to care well for ourselves, whatever that looks like for us. Like that it can't be separated, that we could care. It can be separated, but you're going to feel it in a not great way if you're caring more for others than you are for yourself. Like the discrepancy there I think it will become obvious very quickly, right? Because you're depleted in that place.
And do you think that might amplify the guilt?
Yeah. Yeah, because you can't be enough if you're doing it from a depleted place.
Yeah.
I don't think. And then the courage to use our voice.
Yeah.
Say, what that thing that we didn't really work for me. That cleaning out the garage today, when I had that list, I didn't ask, and I need to be curious now, and it feels uncomfortable to go back and do it retroactively. But would it have been right? Like, I really struggle with that. I really struggle with like going back and saying, that wasn't really what I meant.
Yeah.
It wasn't really, I wasn't really present by doing that. So yeah.
What helps you find the courage?
Ooh, praying helps me find courage. Practicing helps me find courage. So like practicing what I'm going to say. I have a pretty bad memory. And a lot of times it helps if I write it down either I was having a phone call with somebody who was she wasn't giving advice, she was just sharing her experience the other day. And she said something so profound. I pulled over so I could write it in the notes section of my phone. And I was like, I have to remember this. I have to remember exactly what you're saying. That's really important to me. So practice and prayer, and then, I don't know, and then doing it. Like, even like, I'm just thinking of a recent experience that I had. I was like cringing. It kind of almost curled in a ball, but still like, even with a really small, like I felt almost like my voice was like a baby, still saying what I knew was true. How about you? What helps with courage?
It's almost like a muscle that the more you flex it, the more you have. I think.
Yeah.
I'm just like, there's two kind of like completely two different scenarios floating in my head right now. But like, one is I'm just remembering like one of the girls I was working with a couple years ago, and like Christmas was such a hard time for her because she would be in family environments where like people would be asking questions about like how's her health, or just how's your job, and her job was like a shame trigger for her, and just different things. It just wasn't comfortable, and she was just like, you were saying like practicing the words to be able to be prepared so that you're not walking into a situation where you can preempt what people might be saying, and you're not walking in like as if it's your first time, right? Like you have the history, you have the patterns, you know, and so how can you care well for yourself, so that when you're showing up, you then the courage is a lot more accessible because you don't need to prepare yourself. So whether it's words, my good friend Christy, she tells her little kid, she's a speech pathologist, so like words are super important to her, and I will never forget this. I remember it was like her little girl was like 5 or 6 years old and was trying to express herself, and she'd be like, use your words. And it's just like, I've never seen anybody say that, or like, yeah, hear anybody say that. And I'm like, and so sometimes I tell that to myself, like, Kendra, use your words. Like you find, if you don't have the words, go find them. Like there's this really cool thing called Google, and it has a thesaurus and it has like a dictionary. And so if you're not really finding the words, like you can like find your words and use them. And I think it's like giving that space. I know I need the space to like collect myself before I go into situations like that. So that's like one scenario. Like I'm just picturing like family in the living room, and there's like Christmas music and Christmas lights and booze and that, and you're sitting there and feeling like, oh my God, I don't want to really be here. And this conversation, where's this conversation going? Like just walk out of the room, like go for a walk around the block, like get some fresh air, and find within you your words or whatever it is that you're needing, so that when you can go back in there, you can express and say like what's gonna, like it's almost like standing for yourself, and not in a combative way, but just like because you're worth it. So I don't know, it's like a long-winded way of courage, but the other thing, like courage wise, coming to me, like recently I've been having to make a lot of phone calls to people. Like, I don't know, I hate making random cold call phone calls because I lose my word. Like I've never liked it. And so I'm having to introduce myself, introduce my business, introduce why I'm calling, and lots of room for rejection in there, lots of room for failure in there. And I think that what so aside from just doing it, like just sucking it up and doing it, because sometimes there's the courage, I think also what I've found through the process is like people are people. And so regardless of the context of you're connecting with them, whether it's like your really annoying uncle or like a random person that you're like, hey, you want to buy some fish? Like they're just people. So the more you can just remind yourself that they're human, you're human, and connect to the humanity in the situation, I find courage comes from there too.
Yeah. Oh, that's such a good reminder. I love that. Yeah, because I get stuck a lot of times in comparison. Like there's so much better, more successful. They know so much more. They have their words, right?
Yeah.
So then
they don't have their words. I'm telling you.
They don't. They
don't have their words. Yeah. I'll just tell you this really quick. I started writing about this and I haven't been able to finish the post or whatever to share, but there was one week where it was like blasting out, like it was like all day on the phone. So I must have spoken to like, in a space of like 3 days, I'd spoken to like 15 new people, or maybe around that number. And I was just reflecting on the conversations. Some of them were uncomfortable phone calls, like, we don't have money, can you help, right? Like, that's not fun to call like insolvency practitioners. And then on the flip side, we were calling businesses who deal in investing in businesses like ours. And so, it's kind of like the two extremes. Anyway, all that to say, so I called this one guy, and I didn't actually think I'd get him on the phone. I was prepared to send an email, and he's like, oh yeah, oh right, that sounds really interesting, like tilapia and this and that. And he's like, actually, I think we'd like to come visit. Like, I feel like that would be the next step. Like, we'll come visit. He's like, I'll check with my research team and this and that. He's like, and he pulled out his calendar. He goes, oh, he's like, we're just up against this unofficial deadline of the end of the year and Christmas. He's like, oh, and it was just like so real because he was like, hit the nail on it was spot on. Like the whole world is working to December 24th or December 25th or December 31st, one of those 3 days for this. Ta-da! And why? And and it was just a moment like that like if you can find those moments of connection, I feel like courage breeds from that. Because then I was like, oh, I can call the next person. They're just like, they're up against this unofficial deadline of December 24th too. Like we're all in the same boat here.
Yeah, I love that. And I like the connection and the realness gave you permission to just keep being you and to keep calling and doing like your next right thing and to keep using your words.
Yeah.
Like it happened really pretty evidently in your story anyway. So it's just about time to wrap up, and I have so many good notes that I'm just gonna kind of pull up and recap.
Get the stickies out.
Okay, so the first one that I wrote was permission to pause, to use our voice, to be curious, and to trust the process. And on the trust the process sticky, I wrote, it takes time to get stuff out of the package.
Just in case you don't like packaging on the table either.
But no, I think that's like, I put that as a metaphor. Like that's big stuff. I have a kid starting outpatient rehab. It's going to take some time for him to get all of that out of the package. Then I wrote practice curiosity for connection to myself and connection to other people. And I love the reframe. I care enough. And then I had an arrow pointing to guilt. So instead of guilt, I care enough. Then underneath I have the question, like, what is it that I really care about? Yeah. What is it? So, and for courage, I have practice, praying, preparation, and space to cultivate courage. So, and then while you were talking, I wrote myself a permission slip, which it just says, I give myself permission to, and I filled in the blank. The first one that I made, to use my words. Yes. Right? Like, because my words are where my desires are going to be expressed. And I think that I can have a guilt-free holiday season if I know that I'm in integrity with me. Yeah. I can't do that if I'm holding my stuff inside. Yeah. That's pretty much the bottom line for me anyway. Yeah. So that's my recap. Those are my my unofficial bullet points. I love that. I love the way that turns out. Totally unplanned world. You just need to know this. This is just Liberty's brilliance of her sticky notes. This is yeah, that's what it is. I remember the first time we ever talked, you're like, oh my God, I'm writing that down on a sticky note. Yeah, I still have that one. That was like 3 or 4 years ago, actually. Yeah. Yeah. I'm trying to think what, I feel like I'm going to have to rewind that and listen to that again and write down my own notes on that as a reminder. So I would encourage you, if you're listening, like, feel free to pause, rewind, like 10, 20 seconds and capture your own version of that. And I'm just thinking, I give myself permission to. What's coming to me with that is like, so I have a little niece who I think she's 9 months in December, like in a week. And I have a little, I can't say because I have a surprise of what I want to create for her first Christmas. And so we just had our 5th wedding anniversary, and my wedding album is not like this. It is like piles of photos in my living room right now waiting to be assembled after 5 years. And so I give myself permission to make time for what matters. Because my tendency is to always put what really matters to the bottom of the list in order to. Yeah. The urgent over the important, right? Yeah. Yeah. I got it. I hear you loud and clear. Well, yeah, I hope that, everybody that watches this gets their own practical sticky notes that they can put on their bathroom mirror as a reminder, and that they will step out of the lists and comparison and all of those things that keep us trapped in, I don't know, that big river of guilt, and just dog paddling as fast as we can to get out on the side and go, I don't have to swim there. You know, I can rest over on this side, and whatever that looks like. And I'd love for everybody to share what they're giving themselves permission for. You know, it might be to take a nap on Christmas Day. It might be to say no to their parents about some family tradition they've always done. It could be to not give gifts to every single stinking person, including the mailman. Come on, please. I've obviously given myself permission not to do that. Or all the teachers. I'm not giving teachers gifts this year. Whatever it is, like, we actually want to know, because it's inspiring to hear what y'all's process is.
Yeah. And, let us know, because we learn from people. Like that's why there's two of us.
Yeah.
So, yeah. And I also am really curious. I would love to know, I'm going to ask you guys a question. What do you want, right? Like, we've been thinking about going into the next year, what we want to talk about, but we actually want to know what you want to be talking about, and what topics would, I'm going to use the word help, but that's not really the word I'm looking for, because I can't find my words right now. But yeah, just what would, I'm just going to default to help. What would help in terms of more conversations like this? So let us know.
Yeah, topics. That'd be great. All right.
Okay.
Have a merry, guilt-free Christmas and holidays. Adios.
Ciao, guys.